Yes, so we are live now on our YouTube channel. So we are ready to go ahead.
Great.
Okay. Hello, and a very heartfelt welcome to all of you here to our live podcast on the theme that we have chosen for today, understanding porn addiction. My name is Priyanka Bhattacharjee, and I'm a practicing clinical psychologist working with BlockerX team powered by Atmana. Just to tell you a very brief about BlockerX, it's one of the very upcoming and highest rating apps working exclusively in helping people recover from porn addiction. There's a slight power cut on my side, but we'll go ahead with the session. So, porn addiction currently has been a very growing concern with a lot of factors involved in terms of easy accessibility to the internet, easy availability, a lot of unsupervised internet usage among children and adolescents, and thus porn consumption is really growing worldwide. Research has been giving us very surprising studies, and a very important research by American Psychological Association has mentioned that the first exposure to online pornography has come to 13.337 years of age. And in fact, a lot of unnamed research has also given us the data that it's in fact 11 years of age, and the youngest exposure being 5 years of age. Yes, I mean, it's completely stunning and it's completely surprising to see certain research findings. And with this particular pandemic situation, probably the porn consumption behavior has really doubled, and it has really fueled up to something even more greater. So, to talk on this particular topic, we are very pleased to have with us Dr. Nicholas Nissen. So, Dr. Nissen, a very warm welcome, and so much, and we are so much glad that you are collaborating us with BlockerX on this particular topic on our first podcast. I'll just give a very brief about Dr. Nissen. Dr. Nissen is an American physician, author, and an influencer. He is a clinical fellow in the Department of Psychiatry at Harvard Medical School and a correspondent for ABC News with frequent media preferences. He's the host of the Brain Health with Dr. Nissen podcast, where he discusses very promising and latest evidence based approaches for enhancing mental health, sharpening cognition, and optimizing performance. So, Dr. Nissen, thank you so much, and it will be a great experience for all our listeners, all our viewers, to hear from you. So, to begin with the session, I may request you to please share your experience and insight of working with individuals with porn addiction.
Hey Priyanka, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm happy to discuss a little bit about that. So I think that actually one of my first interests in the mental health space in general was the problem of porn use. So it was something that, myself as a millennial growing up during this age where we are having, access to the internet, as a young adult in college, I saw as a huge problem with my friends and with everyone, all sort of young men my same age. We were all like, "Hey, this pornography thing is problematic." And even though I've said to myself, I don't want to do this or I need to cut it back, that it's a difficult thing to do. And so I actually in college was part of this kind of informal group of guys that would get together and would try to support one another to to check in and make sure that nobody relapses and that everyone stays clean. And I learned a lot from that. And as I went on to do my rotations in addiction psychiatry and seeing people that were dealing with heroin addictions or alcohol addictions, I was seeing that they were using the exact same things that my friends were using in college, to stay away from porn and to stay clean from pornography. So as I've gone on now to my clinical work, I do a lot of work with adolescents and children who need to be, hospitalized psychiatrically. And one concerning thing that I've had in particular is coming up, meeting a lot of young kids who have mental health struggles symptoms like ADHD, symptoms like depression that are likely related to their pornography use. But then I've also come across some more extreme cases of adolescents who have had abnormal paraphilias, who have had dangerous paraphilias, which we can talk more about later. So it's gotten me very concerned, and I think that it's really an unprecedented issue in the age of the smartphone. That for the first time ever, there's unlimited free access to pornography to anyone anywhere that is of wide ranging amounts of uh, you know different content, dangerous content. So I think it's something for everyone to be mindful of and very careful about.
Absolutely. I think you have really touched on very critical points talking about it all since mental health and how internet has been very much easily accessible to everyone. And I guess the discussion about understanding porn addiction, I guess it's a very long procedure. I think and it's very difficult to sum up everything in just 1 hour of a session. But I will definitely address things gradually, and we'll plan things in the upcoming sessions. That's really very important things to talk regarding porn addictions. Yes, so I think going ahead with this, the nature of the sessions, what we get to hear from a lot of users who have been our users of BlockerX application, who have registered themselves while they are into the recovery process of porn addiction. They come up with us very, usual, questions. And as a clinical psychologist, we do get, clients. We have a lot of people, asking certain questions, how they go about. So, as a clinical professional, like, do you think that there are certain factors which make an individual more prone to develop this porn addiction? What is your take on that?
Yeah, well, certainly there are a couple different factors. The first one I would say is, what is your relationship with your phone and with the internet? And so for people that are living more, internet based lives, that are using their phone regularly, or just spending a lot of time alone on the internet in their room, they're at higher risk of interacting with pornography. It taps into the exact same sort of dopamine circuits that are tapped into in people that have digital addictions or phone addictions. And so for people that are they're feeling like in general they're having trouble stepping away from social media, or having trouble controlling how often they're playing online video games, or other things like that, you're you're at higher risk of being in an environment where you can relapse on pornography, or that you can come across a trigger to use pornography. So that's definitely a group that would be higher risk, people that that live a more digital lifestyle. And the second group of people I would say are people that are alone, and that don't have a partner. So the reality is there is a strong biological impulse for all people, and especially for males, to procreate, and to to be sexual. And so it's a natural thing to have that drive. And if you're living a lonely life, and if you're not having that regular interaction with another partner, it puts you at higher risk of looking for that elsewhere. And you can sort of briefly tap into satisfying your body's sort of biological need through the cycle of pornography and masturbation. But what it actually ends up doing is worsening your social skills, worsening your abilities to actually have real sexual interactions in a real physical world. So it puts you at higher risk. So those would be two groups of people that I would say are generally at risk: people that live very digital lives, and people who are unpartnered. And then the third thing that I would say is young people. And that's just because there's such a strangeness and sense, in such a sort of forbidden fruit sort of quality about pornography, that for young people who that have parents that are trying to protect them from things, and say, oh, don't look at that, stay away from that. It sort of grows the amount of the allure of pornography. And so for young people who don't have a lot of self-control, it can be very dangerous to be exposed to pornography at that age, when you don't physically have the structures in your brain and your prefrontal cortex to be to be able to, inhibit your own, instincts. You don't have the wisdom to stop yourself. So those would be three groups who I'd say are particularly at risk.
Right, right. So I think that is again talking about role of parents and things like that. So and the impact pornography has on an individual's life is so much multifaceted, and it has an impact on the entire social functional mechanism of the individual, right? So in the similar line of thoughts, like what do you think should be the role of the the kind of support system an individual requires while in the recovery process from porn addiction?
Yeah, a support system is very, very important. And I think probably the most important support person that somebody can have is a sponsor. And so this is something that is seen in the recovery world for all sorts of addictions, for alcohol addiction or heroin addiction, cocaine addiction. It's very common for people in groups like Alcoholics Anonymous to get a sponsor who checks in with them, people that they can speak to about their triggers, about their vulnerable environments, and who will hold them accountable. So it's a lot more difficult, to relapse on pornography if oh crap, tomorrow I have my meeting with my sponsor, and like, even though I'm really having this desire right now, I I don't want to tell them tomorrow that I relapsed. So it can be a really strong way to deter yourself from using. So that's one of the most important things, kind of like what I described with my college friends is, it could be a group of your friends or buddies, or it could be somebody who you don't know very well. And using a resource like BlockerX, that where you can find a sponsor, is a really good way to hold yourself accountable. So yeah, so and a couple more things I would say about the importance of a sponsor. One thing that I mentioned is sharing with them your vulnerable environments. So these are environments where that you've relapsed in the past. Maybe you tend to relapse after you've had a couple of drinks of alcohol, which is very common. Maybe you tend to relapse when you're home alone, and so a vulnerable environment would be for you when your partner leaves town, or when your roommate is gone. Um, Maybe another vulnerable environment would be when you're sad, when something doesn't go too well at work or at school. So if you have somebody who's your sponsor, and that you're going into a vulnerable environment, and you say, hey, this weekend I'm home alone, and you text them or give them a heads up, then they can check in with you and see, over the weekend, hey, you doing okay? I know this is a period when you're more likely to relapse. Similarly, you can share with them what your triggers are, whether it be certain social medias or accounts on social medias, whether it be certain film or video that you watch, that you can check in with them and say, hey, I just saw this person, or I just saw this thing, and it really triggered me, and I just want to let you know about that right now I'm sort of feeling, at higher risk. So having a sponsor is very important. And then, in addition to that, I think that there's some really great community in the sort of porn recovery community, just like there is in the addiction recovery community. So whether it be online connecting with others that are having this issue, like what you can do on BlockerX, or a lot of people have heard of the nofap communities, all the nofap sort of social media accounts, to comment about your urges or about your streak and how long you've been going, and to interact with other people that are also interacting. It's just a way to kind of hold yourself accountable, and share with others in your recovery in a way that's really, really supportive and really powerful.
Right, absolutely. I mean, a lot of times we see, the kind of support group, impacts the individual. And most importantly, I think I've heard a lot of times hearing from the individuals with porn addiction, they feel normalized. That's, I think, one of the very important feeling they
Right.
experience, that, I'm not the only person to be experiencing this, to be going through this particular hardship. I know, I mean, it's extremely difficult for the person who is undergoing porn addiction as well. So yeah, I think talking in the similar lines of having a support group, having a peer support. A lot of times users and a lot of time clients, they come up and say, and we also see the role of partners. So that is often a question that, what should be the role of partners. At the same time, it is also growing concern for the mental health of the partner. I mean, a lot of times the partner comes in with the mental health condition because his or her partner is a porn addict. So,
Hmm.
the first line of contact is actually the partner, okay, because their partner is the
Hmm.
porn addict. So according to you, what should be the role of a, partner, or what best a partner could do, or what should a partner do in a particular situation when they find out that, their spouse, their living partner, he or she is having porn addiction?
Yeah. Well, it's very important to communicate as a partner, because sometimes people can have limited insight into how big of a problem that this is for them, and so if you can make it known that, in what ways you see it as an issue. So some ways that partners might notice this is if if their partner who's using pornography has either premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction, but also, and probably maybe even the more common thing, is that there's kind of abnormal sexual behaviors that the partner uses, and it's something that maybe they see or they watch, on a video, and maybe it's masochistic or sort of like violent, and it's actually a problem. And something that I see clinically is, people that are have alleged, sexual assault claims against them because they, acted more aggressively in a sexual situation with somebody, just because they're acting in the way that they're seeing on the pornography, and in reality, uh, that might not be something that your partner likes, or if it's a new partner, it might scare them, and they might, call the police. So that's something that's really, uh, something for the partner to notice and to voice about if they feel uncomfortable. But secondly, I would say, it's it's good for a partner to sort of assess how much the porn user knows that their problem is a problem. And so, there's a few ways to do this in psychiatry. One of the ways to do this is through motivational interviewing. So what you can ask is, say, how big of a problem is porn for you from a scale of 1 to 10? So this is something that's used in motivational interviewing for addictions. And normally people, they don't say, oh, it's a 1, it's not a problem, or it's a 10, it's, an enormous problem. Normally they say, well, it's an 8, or it's a 6, or it's a 3. And so what you can do is you can ask, well, why is it not a 1? Why is your pornography not, no problem for you? Normally then you can get them to acknowledge, well, I don't think it's a big problem for me, but I said it's a 3 because I guess I do see that, it makes you feel uncomfortable sometimes how I act in the bedroom, or or I've spent too much time on it, and I'm not meeting my goals in my work or in my, schoolwork. So, by asking them, why is their number a 3 or a 5 instead of a 1 or a 0, you'll start to help them to, name the ways that they're noticing that it's an issue, and you can support them in that. And then also, in ways that they miss, you can bring it up. Be like, well, hey, I hear you mention those things, and what impact do you think it's also maybe having on your productivity when you're at home, or as you're working from home during the pandemic? How is this, impacting your goals, your professional goals? So those are a few ways. And then, of course, if it is a really big problem, and it's something where, where it's getting either very dangerous, or you're feeling unsafe, or you think that they might be unsafe, then it may be the case that it's an emergency, and that you need to get, emergency medical help.
True. I mean, that's the insight level is so important, because a lot of times, individuals who are themselves, under the, porn consumption behavior, they don't see it as a problem until and unless, the partner or the family members or the relatives, friends, they raise a, red flag. A lot of times we see that. Although it's equally true that the individual realizes themselves too, but yes, I mean, developing that insight is so important.
Hmm.
People say that consumption of pornography or watching porn, or having a porn addiction has to do with an individual's self-esteem. I mean, it's a two-way relationship. Maybe the individual has a lower self-esteem and it's a kind of a compensation process, or a person being an addict of pornography, that leads to self-esteem. So what is your take on that?
Yeah, well, I think one way that's helpful to think about this, and I'm sure it will come up later in our conversation, is how are ways that pornography is like drugs that people like to use and abuse. And so the initial stages of pornography use, when you come across something that triggers you, and then you start to Google or search for images or videos, and then you click on one, and then you click on another one. You're on the chase, you're on the hunt. And this is a neurologically, it's a dopamine, sort of predominant sort of state that you're in. You have elevated dopamine, you're on the hunt to go and get. And that's an exciting sort of feeling in your body. Your heart rate will go up. You'll maybe feel a little bit more sort of curious. You'll feel more energized. So people can get sort of addicted to that sensation, and it's very similar, like comparing to drugs, it's very similar to using cocaine or using another stimulant, that first
True.
phase of using pornography. And so you get all this excitement build up, and in people that are using pornography regularly, I mean, they're getting very serious, sort of dopamine surges on a daily basis, just like somebody who uses cocaine every day would have. And so, one of the ways that people describe what it's like to be on cocaine, to be high on cocaine, is they feel powerful. You feel like the boss. You feel cool, and that's what happens. That's what people describe in the beginning of a pornography sort of binge too. It's like as they're looking at this exciting stuff, and it's making them feel kind of more interested and energized. It feels a little powerful at first. And so for people that have low self-esteem, it can be sort of a dangerous thing to feel like you are on top of the world, and sort of, for whoever's looking at you through the video, or it feels like they're looking at you, you feel empowered. And especially if you live a very lonely life, or if you live a life where you have low self-esteem or feel very not powerful, it's a cheap and easy way to get that quick sensation. But it's just like, getting a line of cocaine and getting that, as a way to sort of boost your self-confidence. I think most people know that's probably not very healthy, and that there's other healthier ways to get that sensation. And another thing that we can talk about later is, well, what's the downsides to that? Hey, if I have low self-esteem, then what's the downside to getting a little boost every now and then through pornography? And it's that there's a withdrawal syndrome. There's the post-nut syndrome that happens, which is why probably a lot of you are watching it, because it feels
Yeah.
terrible after you relapse. And in a lot of ways, it mimics withdrawal from cocaine. So depression is very common in people as they're withdrawing from cocaine or other stimulants. And it's exactly what you see in people that have regular pornography use, is that they may feel a bit lower energy, a bit depressed, in the period that they're, just recovering from their porn addiction. So, yeah, those are a couple thoughts of the
Yes,
impact
I
on
mean,
people.
this was, I guess, I think you have touched the most critical point that we were actually, landing up in this particular discussion when you talked about this mental health comorbidities, and you can definitely take up this, the self-esteem concerns as a post-nut syndrome and situations like that, and because there are two reasons. Number one, of course, I can see one of the participants commenting on having anxiety issues. I'll just go quickly scroll up to the thing, to the question, asking about this anxiety issues related to porn addiction. And
Hmm.
in general, we see that people do not consider porn addiction to have a kind of mental health impact. They see it as an individual things and separate things, and mental health having their own levels of stigmas in different parts of the world. And along with that, porn addiction having different amount of hesitation operating across different parts of the world. I think you can really elaborate a little bit more on, how porn addiction and mental health concerns, and what kind of mental health concerns we mostly see among the porn addicts. You can really, speak a little more on that. That would be very, interesting for our listeners too.
Absolutely. So, as we were talking a bit about the role of dopamine, this is something that's the case for pornography use, just like it is for a social media or digital addiction. Is that a lot of these systems are built, to get that dopamine hit that we want, and it's something that people are probably aware of, but nevertheless, we all fall into this. I fall into this too. I have social media accounts, and you get the little excitement, the little sense of empowerment that happens when something is liked or commented on, or you also get that as you're searching for something and you're finding something a little more and more exciting. In the instance of pornography, of going from looking at maybe a picture that's a little bit exciting, and then to one video that's exciting, and then to one that's a little bit more, you get addicted to this surge of dopamine, and a lot of the symptoms that it creates mirror those of ADHD, so attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And so in people that feel like they're having difficulty concentrating, that are feeling like they're having difficulty staying on a task, that are having difficulty reading or doing another task like that, where you have to have prolonged attention. These systems are created, social media is created, and the videos and pornography are created so that we are being trained to have less and less prolonged attention. And so this gives us the symptoms of ADHD. So for people that feel like, yeah, I'm actually having difficulty concentrating, I'm feeling like I need to switch from one task to another, that that might be related to your pornography use, and to social media use. Something like TikTok, where the videos only last 15 or 30 seconds. It's we're getting trained to have shorter and shorter attention spans. um, and then I would say, the other mental health issue that I sort of mentioned is depression. And so, I think both from a biochemical sort of standpoint, you're at higher risk of developing depression, because you're coming down from this dopamine surge, which is just like what happens when you're withdrawing from cocaine. You feel tired afterwards. You feel low motivation, because your body is used to having you have higher tolerance for dopamine. Um, but in addition, you're at higher risk for having depression, because you feel like crap about yourself. You feel like, I'm such a loser, because I said a million times I wasn't going to do this, and here I am again, and here I'm laying by myself, and I don't have a girlfriend or a wife or a partner. And it so both biochemically, you can be at higher risk for depression, but also psychologically, you can feel very you know disempowered, and it just decreases your self-esteem, like we spoke about before. So I think ADHD and depression are probably the most common psychological or mental health impacts. But another one that I really want to mention is paraphilias. So abnormal sexual desires. I've had several patients now who are young, adolescents or young adults, who either have developed an interest in bestiality, so sexual, sort of interactions with animals, or extreme masochism, where to the point of needing to see blood in order to feel sexually aroused. And for both of them, it was hugely, I mean, they felt very embarrassed about it. They felt very worried about it, because in order for these two people I'm thinking about, in order for them to, feel sexually aroused at all, they had to engage with things that were either very disgusting and embarrassing to them, or that were very dangerous and that are, possibly incriminating. So, it's a major risk with all of this that needs to be kept in mind.
Sure.
And we could talk a little bit about why that is. Why do people develop paraphilias? Um, I don't want to get too out of order here if you have another question, but would you mind if I speak a little bit
So
about
please,
that?
please,
Okay.
please, yeah.
So there's been, I spoke about tolerance. So
Mm,
tolerance is what happens when your body gets used to a certain substance and it doesn't stimulate you in the same way that it did. So if you think about alcohol users, it might start that get a buzz on one or two drinks, but as you use more and more, your enzymes in your liver that break them down, are less effective at breaking down alcohol. And so before you know it, you have people who have alcoholism who are,
mm,
consuming 20 drinks a day and they're still, standing and not like knocked out. Your body's really good at tolerance. And similarly, you can develop a dopamine tolerance or a sexual tolerance where you, in order to be aroused, you have to consume either more and more or more
mm.
extreme and more
True.
novel sort of content. So there's this one study that was done. I can maybe share it with you later, but
Yeah,
where they
sure.
they they measured the rate of erections in men as they were watching a pornographic video, and sure enough, it was high at the beginning, and then as they watched it around the 10th time, almost nobody got an erection anymore because it wasn't novel anymore. It wasn't exciting. And then what they did around the 18th time that they viewed it is they changed the video for something new,
Okay.
something different.
Mm,
And what
mm,
happened? Everyone returned to having an erection again. And so it shows that human beings that are being exposed to pornography, they need to constantly be exposed to something novel, something new in order to be
right.
aroused. And
Mm,
the danger of that is that you start with watching some sort of quote unquote regular sexual encounter that's maybe just
true.
a
Mm,
couple
mm,
in a bedroom, and then
mm,
then maybe, oh, this next one, it's a little new because maybe the female looks a little different, maybe they look a little younger, and then you start going down this path until you need to be exposed to more and more different, more and more, in this case, younger sort of uh, characters and people in the video, to then where the only way that you can get aroused is watching, like child pornography or something like that. That's extremely dangerous and problematic. And that
true.
again would be another paraphilia, pedophilia. So,
Mm.
anyways, that's one of the dangers, one of the serious mental health dangers of pornography is paraphilias or abnormal sexual desires.
True, absolutely. So, a lot of times, people come and ask, like, what are the common distracting techniques? I mean, definitely, it's very difficult to just pinpoint on a few and particularly, certain, thumb rule approaches or approaches which always work best. But, working with this population for some time now and, dealing with certain clients, what do you think, according to you, are, certain distracting techniques which might be really helpful for the people dealing with porn addiction.
Yeah. So I think it's important to think about where we are in the relapse phase.
Mm,
So, something that I like to talk about is, the process and how it always goes when people relapse. First, you have a vulnerable environment. So I spoke about that before. Maybe you are at high risk when you're alone or
mm,
when you just had a few drinks. It's your vulnerable environment. Then you have a trigger. You come across
mm,
something like on social media or a video or a person that triggers you to be, kind of interested in maybe
true.
watching porn. So then you have an initial, for a lot of people, it's an innocent thought. It's like, oh,
Mm,
I wonder if there's something out there about that person. I wonder if there's a photo out there or something,
mm, mm,
that's maybe not fully, I'm going to go watch pornography right now. But
true,
so it
true.
starts with this sort of innocent thought. Um, and then as you dip your toe into that, then you get what I call the physiological cascade. That's when your dopamine rush starts because now you're
Mm,
on the hunt. You
right.
you thought it's just an innocent thought, and
Mm,
now you're looking at photos, and then you find a video, and then it brings you to another video, and you're getting this rush. You're having an increased heart rate. You're feeling sort of excited and curious, and then around this time is when you start to get some inhibitory thoughts from your prefrontal
mm,
cortex, a part of your brain that's designed to keep you from doing stupid stuff. And it's trying to, it might say, oh, you said you wouldn't do this, or oh, that you always relapse when you go to this site or whatever. Um, and then usually people after that have a free fall statement, which is the, screw it. You know, it's too late, or one time wouldn't be enough. It's the thing that you did to go past the inhibitory thought. And then you relapsed, and then you have the post nut syndrome afterwards. So that is the cycle.
Mm.
And so when you're talking about what are the best distracting techniques, well, the best thing is to, first of all, not be in a vulnerable environment, right? So you can avoid, because if you need a distracting technique, that means that you're already maybe have been triggered and are maybe in the physiological or the chemical cascade phase, right? We want to avoid that, first of all, by removing your vulnerable environments. So that can be done by blocking certain websites, using different apps, by having a sponsor who supports you, right? But then if you do get triggered, and you're and you have the innocent thought of, oh, I'm going to go see what's out there, then, and you're starting to feel sort of the chemical cascade, you're feeling the excitement, and you're like, oh, this is dangerous, I need to distract myself. Then there are a few things that you can do. And so one thing that I think is probably the most easy for people to do is to remember the phrase, to change your psychology, change your physiology, right?
Right, right,
So
great.
to change your mind, you need to change your body. And by changing how your body feels, you'll change what your mind is thinking about. And so there are some ways that you can very quickly change how your body is, and it will impact your brain and what you're thinking about. One of the ways would be to do an intense exercise suddenly. So you're having this urge, and if you just fall to the ground and you do as many push-ups as you can until you literally just fall on the ground, you will not be thinking about pornography. You will be breathing hard,
True.
and you will be thinking about, what a good set of push-ups that was. So that can be a really good, quick, break, really quick change in the system, right? Another one would be to get exposed to cold water. So to put your face in the sink, or to take a cold shower. You do a really cold shower, and you will not be thinking about pornography. Similarly, go outside, go for a jog, things like that. So those are some really, easy ways at home. Uh, a Another way is to make it impossible for yourself to use porn. So the way that I suggest is to go to a public space. So if you're feeling triggered, you're thinking about using porn, grab your stuff and go to a coffee shop and start working there, right?
Right.
Grab your stuff, go to the library and start working there. Go over to a friend's house or to a family member's house. It will
Sure.
be impossible for you to use pornography in these environments, and so that will help to control you. Um, and then the last thing I would say is to get busy. So there's a phrase
True.
that a lot of people maybe have heard of, and it's common in the addiction community, which is idle time is the devil's playground.
Diverse. Right.
Yeah. So, when we have too much time, we do stupid stuff, right? So we want to fill up our time, and the more busy we are, we'll find that we'll use porn less.
Right,
So,
right. I
yeah.
think this is the very reason why, porn addiction, I think, had reason really multifaceted, particularly during the pandemic situation, because people were locked down,
Hmm.
people were not having much things to do around, they had a lot of leisure time, I think, and internet was very much easily accessible. So I guess this is one of the major reasons why during pandemic it had really, the number of porn addiction cases have really risen so much,
Yep.
right? True. I think this particular technique which you have said, this tips, they are going to be really helpful, because I had seen a lot of people posting in our comment box asking for these techniques and so on, and everybody, a lot of users I can see, they are really thanking for the tips which they are really going to use, and they
Hmm.
think that they are going to be really helpful for them. There's one question. I think so far we have been having questions which are based on very users and common individuals. I have one question for you, like, in terms of understanding this perspective from a professional point of view. I think a lot of professionals who are watching our podcast today, they'll also develop this insight. So what I practicing in India, clinical psychologists practicing in India, we experience that whenever the first time individual with porn addiction seek therapy, so the chief complaints, the issues with which they come are related to something else. I mean, either in terms of their, mental health comorbidities, feeling low, mostly, feeling agitated, not able to focus, right? Being feeling very apprehensive,
Hmm.
right? Or they'll come with, complaints like sleep disruption, not in getting enough sleep,
Hmm.
sleep routine, the sleep wake cycle is completely disrupted, and so on. And as the progress, I mean therapy progress, and as the interactions increase, and then we find out that the root cause of this particular issue is somewhere else, and it is porn addiction. So so individuals who come and seek therapy for porn addiction, it's not
Hmm.
usually the first thing to report that I have this excessive use or consumption of pornography, and hence I guess I really need to come out of it. What is the situation there in your place in America, in US? How people come and report their difficulties? How I mean clinically how they present themselves?
Yeah. I mean, I think like you just said, I all the time, especially for young or middle-aged males who come in with symptoms of depression and or
True,
ADHD, I
true,
always ask about porn use because
mm,
I mean,
true,
there's been some surveys that I've done that show that 90% of men are consuming
mm,
pornography with
mm,
some regularity.
mm,
So
mm,
I mean, it is a huge issue, and speaking about you for normalizing it, I mean,
mm, mm,
look around, guys. I mean, especially I'm speaking to guys, but it's a problem for women as well. But
true, true,
look
true.
around, and chances are, whatever other guy you're talking to, it's an issue for them as well,
Mm,
right?
mm, mm, mm,
But anyways, so any guy that's having a mental health issue, that's having depression, that's having ADHD, or that's maybe having sexual problems as well, I always ask about porn use, and I think it's something that more and more clinicians should ask about. Another
mhm,
common thing, and a very common thing that we see um, in mental health treatment is that antidepressants, one of the common side effects is sexual dysfunction, right? And so, you'll have somebody who has depression, and
mhm,
you start them on an antidepressant medication, and they're like, well, I do find I'm having trouble achieving an erection. And for most doctors, they're like, oh, it's probably your antidepressant, you can take that away. But I always ask before then, I'm like, well, tell me about your porn use, right? Because it is very
true.
common for people to have
Mm,
trouble sexually, or to have trouble getting an
mm,
erection if they're using too much pornography as well. And I find a lot of times people are having
mm,
that side effect not
mm.
from the medication but from their porn use.
Right. So I think it's
Mm.
also similar in your case where people are not coming and reporting that they have porn related issues, maladaptive behavior on the first interaction or on the
Right.
first visit. I understand. Definitely.
Hmm.
So, yeah, we are gradually moving on to the later part of this session when we want to take live questions from our viewers. So, before we have another question from our pre-received questions, I would like to request all our viewers who are viewing us, who are watching us live, if you have any questions for Dr. Nissen, please put it out in the chat box, and we'll try our best to address all your queries. Although we have a few questions coming in already, we'll scroll it up. But if you have any other users want to leave any questions, please feel free to do so. Dr. Nissen, I would want you to talk and emphasize upon the role of taking counseling sessions, be it group therapy or individual therapy, when it comes to porn addiction. Because with the same amount of hesitation, they have this double mind, they have ambivalence whether they need to go, whether they can handle themselves well. So what is your take on that, be it individual therapy or even group therapy?
Yeah. Well, therapy kind of has a bad rap, right? And most people, when they think about therapy, they think about, seeing on different movies, you laying on a couch and talking about your
True.
childhood to a
Absolutely.
psychoanalyst, right? And that's so different from what therapy is.
True, true,
Now
true.
we have,
Absolutely.
if you go on social media, there's this whole community of or a whole kind of market of
Hmm.
self-improvement coaches, right? And like
Yeah. My
success
God.
gurus, right?
My God.
And yeah,
I
but
think you just hit on the bullseye. Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. My God,
and
yes.
and you know what I mean? People like that. People like, tips
Mm,
to succeed and to be better and to be,
true.
held accountable for your goals. And so
Mm,
guess what therapy is? Therapy is a success coach. That's
mm,
what I like to say to people, especially to guys who maybe would be a little bit more hesitant to go to therapy. But therapy is your own, life improvement coach or success coach, because it's somebody who you're going to talk about this issue with in a way that maybe you don't feel comfortable talking with your family, with, or your friends about. And then it'll be somebody that will hold you accountable. So a therapist can play a similar role to that sponsor, like I told you about, where they know what your vulnerable environments are. They know what your triggers are. And then you check in with them and you think, oh, I have a therapy session this week and like I'm feeling really tempted right now, but I don't want to have to,
true.
fess up to having relapse. So
Mm,
I think individual therapy is very important because, it's a space for you to talk about this. It's also a space if you are having the other mental health sort of struggles of having symptoms of depression or ADHD or other things that you're concerned about. It's a good space to bring that up in as well, and to make sure that you're safe. If you're feeling very depressed to where you might not be safe, it's very important to be in therapy so you're checked in on. So that's the role of individual therapy. And then for group therapy, I think it's similar to what you're seeing on BlockerX and what you see in the NoFap community, which is that
mm,
it's awesome to chat with other people. I mean, everyone that's here in the comments, you're interacting with other people that are in the same sort of
mm,
struggle that you are, and there's something really normalizing about that. There's something really empowering about it.
mhm,
So, I totally recommend that you interact in a group therapy setting, whether that be a formal group therapy setting or whether that be informally, in
right.
a
True.
group online, or maybe the best thing would be in person if you have any friends or family also that want to meet up in person and and talk about this and support one another in recovery. That can be really good.
Right, right, right. Right. So, Dr. Nissen, we have started receiving a lot of questions on the chat box. We'll try to finish as much as we can.
Mhm.
There's a question where one of the users have posted asking, can erectile dysfunctioning be reversed?
Yes, it can absolutely be reversed. So, there's a lot of different causes of erectile dysfunction, and a lot of people think of erectile dysfunction primarily in older men, and that's because there are uh, some real biological risk factors later in life for developing erectile dysfunction, like due to like heart disease or different problems with your arteries or whatever. But more commonly, and what's seen in pornography, is that it's from a psychological
Perspective.
origin. Yeah. So a psychologically caused erectile dysfunction can absolutely be reversed. And the way to reverse it is to relearn basically your sexual sort of instincts in a natural way with the real person. um, and so yeah, it can it takes a bit of time, it takes a bit of training, but it can absolutely be relearned, and it may take uh, some cooperation or some sort of planning together, not only with yourself, but with your spouse or your partner, whoever, to sort of start to rebuild that, sexual, regular sort of sexual stimulation.
True, true, true.
Mhm.
Right. So the another question is, what is the best way to transmute your sexual energy?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really difficult question. I mean, it's especially I hear a lot of men say that of, well, I have this energy and I have nowhere else to go with it or put it. I mean, the best answer is in a relationship with another human being, in a sexual relationship with another human being, in a healthy way, right? And so, I always challenge people that are struggling with pornography. I challenge them to use things like dating apps, and you know hopefully you find a good partner and you find a committed long-term relationship, not just somebody to diffuse your your sexual energy onto, because that can be very problematic. But we as humans are designed to procreate. We are designed to to be sexual, and that is okay, right? It's just that it's designed for that to happen in a natural, interaction with the human being. So I would say to get out there and to date. The other thing, though, is that I'll say that your sexual energy will feel a lot more manageable once you stop using pornography, because when you're in the midst of using pornography, you look around and every single, it may be that every single relatively attractive person is triggering you, right? So as you remove some of those triggers from you, you might find that it's less overpowering for you. So I would say cut back on the pornography and go out there, date, put yourself out there, get a committed relationship, be sexually active with another human being in a consensual and loving way, and you will find that your sexual energy is transmuted healthily.
Right. So I think a lot of social skills will also help in the
Mhm.
recovery process and getting out of porn addiction.
Mhm.
So yeah. So we have more of questions like someone has posted that if there is any does excessive masturbation leads to tremendous hair loss?
That's a good question. As far as I know, there's no robust evidence that that's the case.
Right.
But what does cause hair loss is a hormone that's related to testosterone levels, and there are transient increases in testosterone at the beginning phases of porn use. But I'm not aware of that being an issue for somebody that feels like they're having, hair loss that might be related to their porn use. It very well might be the case that it's in a sort of indirect way related to your porn use, which is that you are spending more time indoors, and so you might have low vitamin D levels that is causing your hair loss. Additionally, it might be that you are, getting out less, exercising less, and so having excessive, having sort of an unhealthy diet, or having an estrogen sort of creating. Sort of diet might be something that increases your risk. So that'd be my answer for that.
Right.
Mhm.
Uh, there's a question which says, "What is the healthy limit to watching porn?"
So that's a bit of a tricky question because as a substance, just like any other substance, you know, you could say, what is a healthy limit to using cocaine, or what is a healthy limit to using alcohol? And
Yeah.
well, the answer from a mental health perspective is usually, as long as it doesn't cause problems in your life, then maybe it's not unhealthy for you. So for somebody that drinks alcohol but it doesn't cause you to have problems in your work life, in your relationships, in your kind of mental health and your self-esteem, then maybe it's not a problem for you. But for a lot of people, aside from porn as a substance, porn is also an ethical question, right? Or a philosophical
True.
question. And they might feel that pornography itself is problematic, unethical, or that they're philosophically opposed
Yeah.
to it. So I would say that uh, you know, if you're somebody that believes that porn is unethical at all, then any amount of it would be not good, right? So uh, I would say the healthy limit for somebody that views porn as unethical would be 0.
Right, right. There was a concern posted. It's not exactly a question, but the individual has posted like being single or married for a very long time.
Mhm.
It makes you think in that way. So he has a series of like threads of messages. So basically, that way, in the sense he was mentioning about exposure to the pornographic material. So, do you have anything to put an insight to this?
Well, I think it's really important in relationships to continue to cultivate that and to recover. And like I said, it's going to involve both partners in that. But as far as for a single person, in what way do you mean? I don't
Sorry.
I don't think I caught that as far as for a single person.
Yeah, I
What
mean,
the
this is not
implications would be.
exactly a question, but then,
Mhm.
possibly the individual believes that, being single or staying unmarried for a longer time could
Oh.
possibly, lead to exposure to pornography.
Yeah. I mean, you will have the if you're single or married for a long time, and you feel like you are, not able to trust sexual energy. I mean, that is a very common problem. And the reality is that humans for, thousands of years were partnering at much earlier ages or younger ages than we are now. And some people view that as progress, and some people uh, disagree with that. I think that there's probably a healthy age of, an age of consent, obviously, of being a full adult, but also at the same time not having yourself, be single uh, into later into your life, into your into your 30s or beyond. I mean, that you're going to have a lot of years of having you know uh, either irregular or low sort of sexual interaction in a way that can be very challenging. So yeah, a lot of people, this kind of goes back to the transmuting sort of question, is that people, if they don't get in a relationship kind of earlier on in life, then they can be challenged
Right, right.
to avoid pornography.
A lot of our users have posted like comments in terms of like their sufferings, and it's a very good way that, I think this was also a very small attempt where people are, sharing. It's like a, peer group, a community, kind of a thing, while people are watching you live
Hmm.
and, trying to relate to their experiences. So there are a lot of people commenting upon their struggles of, struggling with social anxiety, struggling with managing. One thing I guess a lot of time people have repeated this question of not being able to manage time because watching pornography, masturbation takes along a lot of consume a lot part of their day. So they
Right.
wanted to, if you can just put some light on how an individual can plan a day ahead.
Yeah. Well, so like I mentioned before, idle time is devil's playground. And so having idle time, having too much free time is going to increase your risk of using pornography. So, trying to fill up your day as much as possible. The second thing is having vulnerable environments. So, being at home or, having a couple drinks or something like that, you want to avoid your vulnerable environments. So that might be the case that, especially now, with pandemic and everyone kind of working from home, being at home, if you use pornography at home, then you want to avoid being at home with free time on your hands as much as possible. So you want to go to, a library or a cafe or something like that to get your work done, or visit a friend or go work at someone else's place. So yeah, that those would be a couple of thoughts about that.
Right. There's one more question. I mean, I feel sorry for our users because of the time constraint. I think we won't be able to cover all the questions.
Hmm.
Maybe we'll try to, communicate to them via text while, replying to each of their queries post
Hmm.
this particular session. But one or two questions that I would just like to take is how to get over urges to watch porn that occur particularly at night.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say, first of all, recognize what is your vulnerable environment there. And so for some people, their vulnerable environment or even their trigger might be just their bedroom. Because if you are
True.
using pornography always in your bedroom, then as you walk into your dark room, it's going to sort of, come upon you of sort of this feeling of, this is the environment that I use porn in, right? And so it may be the case that you have to change your environment. So one way to do that would be to change how your room's arranged to make it feel different. So move where your bed is, change the lighting, maybe paint the walls, or put on new posters or something like that. And it will feel, and then try to maintain it like that. Now that it's a new space, now that it's rearranged,
True.
maintain that this is, a porn free area. That might help for you. For some people, it's more extreme and they feel like they need to move, or or change rooms within the house or something like that. That can be helpful. So late at night, if you find that your bedroom is vulnerable environment, or that it maybe even triggers you to use, then you might think about how you change that up. um, and then secondly, I would say, try to make your bedroom an electronics free space.
True.
So if
True.
you tend to use on your phone, buy a physical alarm clock, put it in your room, and then take your phone and lock it somewhere else in your house. Put it in the kitchen or in the living room or whatever. And making it impossible for you to use in that triggering environment can be really, really helpful.
True. True. One last question we'll take up for this session today. Does masturbation affect physical muscles or it affects stamina? This is from one of the users.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not aware of there being any significant impacts. Like I mentioned before, there are, brief increases in testosterone that happen in the beginning phases of sexual sort of stimulation, but not to a significant degree, as far as I understand, as far as building muscles, or building stamina. The the sort of stamina that it doesn't have a good impact on is your sexual stamina. Like I said, it's very common for people to develop premature ejaculation, especially for people who are using pornography and masturbating, and feel like they're either short on time, or they're nervous about it, or worried about somebody finding them. They might be training themselves to get stimulated, to masturbate, and to ejaculate very quickly. And also, because their actual interactions with another human being feel so different and alien, it can sort of cause them to ejaculate very quickly. So yeah, I would say premature ejaculation would be a form of low stamina that would be very common for people.
Right, 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 right. So thank you so much, Dr. Nissen, and
Mm.
also very sorry to all our viewers. We could not cover all your questions, but we assure you that we'll reply to your questions individually, and we'll definitely reach out to all your doubts. And to all our viewers, please keep tuning into BlockerX YouTube channel. You can keep subscribing it, and you'll get notified for all other updates, and you'll constantly be updated with all the new psychoeducative materials and new information, and that's going to really help you in the future. Dr. Nissen, thank you so much for sparing your time and coming up with this session. It was such a pleasant time to have you with us for this session. It was a very enriching experience for all our viewers, and the best thing was you being in a profession where you could explain things in a way that every individual could relate to, could understand it in such an easy manner. I think that really helps all our users, all our clients. So thank you so much, Dr. Nissen, once again for having your time with us today. So
Thank you,
a huge
Priyanka.
thanks to from on behalf of BlockerX.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here, and a pleasure to field all of your questions. I'm happy. I'll be interacting with you all. You'll see my comment there is Dr. Nissen. Or you can follow me at Dr. Nissen, Dr.Nissen, or on Brain Health with Dr. Nissen podcast. And I'll be replying to your comments there, so you'll see me. And yeah, it's really a pleasure, Priyanka. Great
Yes,
being
yes, that
here.
would be in fact a great idea. All our viewers can also, subscribe to Dr. Nissen's channel, and you can, have your questions directly watch there. So I think that would be a very amazing exchange of information and guidance, right? So thank you so much, all our viewers, and thus we come to an end of this podcast of understanding porn addiction. We are sure we'll come up with more in the coming time. Thank you so much, and a great evening and a great day ahead from the Blocker X team. Thank you.